Until very recently, the story of Gödel's loophole was mainly told as an amusing anecdote about the peculiar man who was arguably one of the greatest mathematical minds of the 20th century. Since 2016, his loophole has been the subject of speculation and concern among legal scholars and journalists. Perhaps the thing that makes the story itself so entertaining, even charming, is the prosaic detail around the friendship of the three intellectual titans who are its protagonists. Kurt Gödel, author of the incompleteness theorems, Albert Einstein, the physicist behind special and general relativity, and Oscar Morgenstern, co-inventor of game theory. Besides their creative genius, these men shared a dark backstory which explains how they all found themselves in Princeton, New Jersey in the 1940s and how they became friends. Albert Einstein, who had lived in Germany and was Jewish, had the good fortune to be in the United States when Adolf Hitler was made Chancellor of Germany. He had already been the victim of anti-Semitic vitriol in Germany and knew what Hitler's ascent to power would mean for him and German Jews. In an interview with the New York Daily Telegram, he said, "As long as I have any choice in the matter, I shall live only in a country where civil liberty, tolerance, and equality of all citizens before the law prevail. Civil liberty implies freedom to express one's political convictions, in speech and in writing. Tolerance implies respect for the convictions of others, whatever they may be. These conditions do not exist in Germany at the present time." Einstein stayed in the United States and became a U.S. citizen in 1940. Like Einstein, Oscar Morgenstern was fortuitously visiting the United States when Hitler annexed his native Austria. Although he wasn't Jewish, he had good reason to believe there would be no place for him in Nazi Austria. He also stayed in the United States and became a citizen in 1944. Kurt Gödel's escape was not so easy. Despite having produced the revolutionary incompleteness theorems that turned mathematics upside down, Gödel had only found work, if you could call it that, as a lecturer without pay at the University of Vienna. There he was part of a gathering of Austrian intellectuals called the Vienna Circle. This was a veritable who's who of influential scientists, mathematicians, and philosophers of the 20th century. The Vienna Circle was viewed with suspicion by Austrian and German fascists, both for its modern ideas and a considerable number of Jewish members. The organizer of the Vienna Circle was a philosopher named Moritz Schlick, who had inspired Gödel to work on mathematical logic. In 1936, Gödel's mentor was gunned down by a former student of questionable mental health. This had a profound impact on Kurt Gödel, who experienced a nervous breakdown. Gödel had suffered from periodic bouts of paranoia and was now worried that someone would try to poison or kill him. There was a kernel of truth in his paranoid delusion. Though Schlick's assassin had been sentenced to 10 years in prison, when the Nazis took control of Austria in 1938, the killer requested a pardon for eliminating, quote-unquote, a Jewish teacher who had propagated doctrines alien and detrimental to the nation. The pardon was granted. A great irony here is that Schlick was not even Jewish. This must have made an impression on Gödel, who was himself a Lutheran, but using modern parlance was Jewish adjacent because of his association with the Vienna Circle. Sure enough, following Hitler's annexation of Austria, his lecturer position was eliminated, and when he tried to apply for an academic position at the University of Vienna, his stellar credentials were deemed worthless and he was rejected. Making matters worse was that over the course of the next year, World War II had started. Since Austria was now part of Germany, it fell under the German military's authority, which had decided that Kurt Gödel was fit for military conscription. Gödel decided that the best route of escape was to travel east. He and his wife fled Austria, taking the Trans-Siberian Railway across all of the Soviet Union. Since Japan had not yet entered the war, they were able to take a ship to Japan and then to San Francisco, from where they were able to take a train across the United States to their final destination, Princeton, New Jersey. There he joined the Institute of Advanced Study, where Albert Einstein and Oscar Morgenstern were already working. Like them, he wished to become an American citizen. In 1947, after World War II had ended, but before the Cold War had started, he got his chance. This is where we are introduced to the famous loophole. In order to become a United States citizen, one needed two character witnesses. For Gödel, these were his friends, Albert Einstein and Oscar Morgenstern. You also needed to take an exam. The test is generally considered to be very easy, but Gödel took it very seriously. He spent weeks studying the U.S. Constitution, after which he pulled Einstein and Morgenstern aside and told them that he had found a flaw in the Constitution that allowed the United States to legally become a fascist dictatorship. His friends worried that if he mentioned this to the judge that would be administering the exam, he would jeopardize his chances of becoming a U.S. citizen. They tried to convince him that he should not raise this constitutional loophole with a judge, saying that the scenario he laid out was extremely unlikely to happen, and that even bringing it up in court might indicate to the judge that he was not committed to American democracy, and hence should be ineligible for citizenship. On the way to the courthouse, Einstein ribbed Gödel, asking him if he had studied enough to see his reaction. Gödel started to worry. When he came before the judge, who incidentally had also made Einstein a citizen, the judge and Gödel had the following conversation, as recounted by Oscar Morgenstern. Judge: Now, Mr. Gödel, where do you come from? Gödel: Where I come from? Austria. Judge: What kind of government did you have in Austria? Gödel: It was a republic, but the constitution was such that it was finally changed into a dictatorship. Judge: Oh, this is very bad. This could never happen in this country. Gödel: Oh, yes, it can. I can prove it. Judge: Oh, God, let's not go into this. That's it. That's the whole story. The judge didn't want to hear about the loophole, and even Morgenstern, who recounts the story, never tells us what it is. Nor does Einstein. Nor does Gödel. For the longest time, I had heard this story as a funny tale about a brilliant man who was too socially unaware to realize he should keep his mouth shut about the loophole at his own citizenship exam. Now that a lot of people are questioning the survival of American democracy, it seems there's been a renewed interest in exactly what loophole Gödel had in mind. There's even been at least one law journal article about it. Legal scholar Effie Guerra Pujol goes so far as to speculate that Gödel had Article 5 of the Constitution in mind when he thought of his loophole. This is the article that sets down rules around amending the Constitution. But in the present context, it may not take a mathematical genius to tell us where the fatal flaws in our Constitution are, but rather another kind of person, one who challenges democratic norms in a way that stretches the fabric of our Constitution to the breaking point. Suddenly, Morgenstern's reassurances to Gödel that, quote-unquote, it was most unlikely that such events would ever occur, ring a bit hollow. When we think about the constitutional questions that would have previously been unthinkable, we have to pause and ponder just how much our Constitution can protect us from a dictatorship, even a temporary one. Perhaps the story of Gödel's loophole is just a funny story of a strange but brilliant man. Or maybe it's the story of three men who had so narrowly escaped the murderous despotism of 1930s and 1940s Europe that they didn't want to contemplate too much the possibility that the democratic oasis they had found could also be at risk. It appears that we, contemporary Americans, will be denied this luxury.